Have you ever found yourself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, your mind running like it's got somewhere urgent to be, but it never quite gets there? You replay a conversation from 3 days ago, wondering if you said the wrong thing. You try to make a decision, but every option spins into another web of what-ifs and maybes. You think yourself into exhaustion, but you never actually arrive at peace. This is overthinking, and if you're honest, you probably know it well. It's not just about worrying, it's a mental loop that never ends. A constant hum in the background that pulls you out of the moment and into a storm of possibilities, predictions, and regrets. It's like your brain is trying to protect you, but instead, it's trapping you. Have you noticed how often you second-guess yourself, or how many times you've run a scenario in your head, trying to perfect it before it even happens? Maybe you feel like if you could just think it through enough, if you could just figure it all out, then you'd finally be okay. But here's a question. What if overthinking isn't a problem with your thoughts, but a symptom of something deeper? What if it's not just a bad habit, but a signal, an invitation to look underneath the surface? In this video, we're going to explore the concept of overthinking, not just as a mental quirk, but as a spiritual and emotional pattern rooted in fear, control, and disconnection. And by the end, you might realize the real reason you can't stop overthinking isn't what you think. Ready to go deeper? Let's begin. In spiritual traditions around the world, from ancient yogic texts to modern mindfulness practices, there's a recurring message. The mind is a powerful tool, but a terrible master. Overthinking through this lens isn't just a mental issue. It's energetic, it's spiritual, it's a symbol of disconnection from the body, from the present moment, and most importantly, from the deeper intelligence that lives within you. Let's start with the nervous system. When we're grounded, when we feel safe and connected to the present, our energy settles into the body. We breathe deeper, we respond instead of react, we trust ourselves and life. But when our nervous system is dysregulated, when we feel unsafe, scattered, or unrooted, our energy shoots up into the head. Thoughts speed up. We spin stories. We lose touch with what's actually happening now. This is the core of overthinking. The body is offline, and the mind is working overtime to fill the void. Spiritually speaking, this is the split between the ego and the soul. The ego, your mind's survival mechanism, craves certainty. It believes that if it can analyze, plan, and predict enough, it can outmaneuver discomfort, chaos, or pain. It doesn't care if you feel good. It only cares if you feel in control. So it overfunctions. It questions everything. It interrupts your peace with a constant stream of what if, should I, and but what about? The soul, on the other hand, lives in presence. It doesn't need certainty because it's aligned with something deeper, trust. Not blind trust, but embodied knowing. The soul doesn't overthink. It listens, feels, and responds. It exists in the now, not in the rehearsed future or the rehashed past. When you're caught in overthinking, it's not just a noisy mind. It's a sign you're living from the ego's seat, grasping for control instead of surrendering to the flow of life. But it's not your fault. We're conditioned into this. From a young age, many of us were taught to be rational, to suppress intuition, to ignore feelings that couldn't be explained. We learned to favor logic over inner wisdom, and in doing so, we became detached from our own bodies, our own knowing. This is why spiritual practices emphasize grounding, because you can't hear your soul when your energy is all in your head. Ever notice how overthinking tends to show up when you're avoiding something? A hard conversation, a risky leap, an uncomfortable truth. That's because the mind is trying to protect you from the unknown. It's trying to give you the illusion of control. But spirituality teaches us that the unknown isn't the enemy. It's the gateway to transformation. It's where magic lives. Synchronicity, intuition, divine timing. These things don't arise from thinking harder. They come when we soften, when we let go of needing to figure it all out. Overthinking, then, is resistance. Resistance to the present moment. Resistance to not knowing. Resistance to the vulnerability of being human. But here's the good news, that resistance is a portal. When you notice yourself spiraling, questioning, doubting, overanalyzing, it's not a sign you're broken. It's a cue, a sacred alarm bell. Something inside you is asking to be held, not fixed, to be felt, not solved. This is where therapy and spirituality meet. The therapeutic world might say, regulate your nervous system, name your thoughts, return to safety. The spiritual world says, come back to presence, trust your inner compass, stop living in the mind, come home to the soul. They're both saying the same thing, just in different languages. So, if you've been stuck in your head, chasing clarity through analysis and self-doubt, consider this. Maybe it's not clarity you need. Maybe it's grounding, connection, trust, not in some cosmic, fluffy way, but in the real, embodied sense of being here, now, with yourself, with your breath, with your heart. Because the mind may promise safety through overthinking, but the soul whispers, you're already safe. Just be. Yet that's not so easy when parts of you don't believe it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't overthink just because we're too in our heads. We overthink because, deep down, there's a younger version of us that had to. A part of us that learned early on that thinking was survival. Think back. Maybe you grew up in an unpredictable environment where the rules kept changing. Or maybe you were criticized a lot, so you learned to replay everything you said, hoping to avoid shame next time. Maybe your feelings weren't taken seriously, so you started to distrust your own instincts. Instead of feeling safe in the world, you began to feel like you had to stay vigilant, hyper-aware, ready for anything. And what's the mind really good at? Vigilance. It scans for danger. It rehearses conversations. It imagines worst-case scenarios. Not because you're negative or weak, but because a younger you once decided that staying mentally 10 steps ahead might protect you from pain. In this way, overthinking is not just a habit, it's a survival strategy, a deeply intelligent adaptation. But here's the problem. It worked then, and it's still running now, even though the threat is gone. Even though the grown version of you is safer, more capable, more loved than that inner child ever imagined. This is where healing begins, when we stop seeing our overthinking as the enemy and start recognizing it as a wounded protector, a mental pattern built to defend a nervous system that never felt grounded. From a spiritual lens, this is where the chakras come into play, specifically the root and third eye. The root chakra, located at the base of the spine, is all about safety, stability, and connection to the physical world. When it's balanced, we feel secure, grounded, and present. But when it's blocked or underactive, we feel unsafe, scattered, and anxious. We disconnect from the body and try to live in our heads. The third eye chakra, associated with intuition, inner vision, and spiritual clarity, becomes distorted when the root is unstable. Without grounding, the third eye turns into over-analysis instead of insight. You think you're seeing clearly, but really, you're just projecting fear into the future. The imbalance creates a split. One part of you is craving clarity, while another part is still scanning for danger. It's like trying to meditate while sitting on a fire alarm. So what do? We try to think our way to safety. If I just plan better, if I just figure this out, if I just make the right choice. But no amount of mental gymnastics can give the inner child what she truly needs: to feel held, to feel safe in the body, in the moment, in the not knowing. This is why therapy, shadow work, and inner child healing are so powerful. They help us uncover the emotional root behind the mental noise, because beneath every thought spiral is a younger self asking, will I be okay? Will someone protect me? Can I trust life? And the truth is, yes. But only if you stop outsourcing that protection to your thoughts. Only if you stop using overthinking as a guard dog and start becoming your own safe space. This is where spiritual insight deepens the healing. Because even though the ego seeks control, the soul teaches us something different. You don't need to know everything to be okay. You don't need to plan every step. Life unfolds whether you control it or not. And most of the time, the path becomes clear only after you've taken the first step, not before. When you understand this, overthinking starts to lose its grip. Not because the thoughts go away, but because you stop believing they're the only way to protect yourself. You stop letting the wounded child drive the car. You soothe her, ground her, hold her hand, and then you let your higher self take the wheel. So the next time you catch yourself in a loop, obsessing over what to say, what to do, how to decide, pause, breathe, ask yourself, who's thinking right now? Is it my soul? Or is it a scared version of me who's trying to stay safe? Overthinking is how we try to feel safe in a world that once felt unstable. But healing is remembering the safety you've been searching for in your thoughts has always lived in your presence. The cost of overthinking isn't just emotional exhaustion or lost time, it's spiritual disconnection. And that cost runs deep. When you're locked in mental loops, trying to solve, control, and predict, you may not notice what you're missing. But what slips through the cracks is profound. You miss the subtle nudges from your intuition. You overlook the tiny signs that the universe sends. You become deaf to the quiet guidance of your soul. Overthinking, in essence, drowns out the inner voice that's trying to lead you somewhere beautiful. Let's talk about intuition. True intuition isn't a loud shout, it's a whisper. It doesn't argue or explain, it simply knows. But to hear it, you have to be still. You have to be quiet enough inside to catch the signal. When the mind is cluttered with constant analysis, second guessing, and problem solving, that signal gets lost in the noise. This is why so many people say they can't access their intuition. It's not gone, it's just buried under layers of mental noise. Imagine trying to tune into a soft radio signal while someone blasts static in your ear. The guidance is there, but you're too busy trying to figure it out to notice it. Overthinking also blocks synchronicity, the serendipitous alignment of events that often happens when we're in flow with life. Have you ever noticed that when you're relaxed, surrendered, and not obsessing over outcomes, things seem to just happen? You run into the right person, stumble upon the perfect resource, or feel suddenly clear on what to do. That's not a coincidence. That's alignment. But when you're stuck in your head, trying to engineer every outcome, you cut yourself off from that flow. Synchronicity requires spaciousness. It asks for trust. It moves through surrender, not strategy. In this way, overthinking isn't neutral. It's spiritually expansive. It reinforces the illusion that the mind is your only guide, that unless you're mentally gripping the steering wheel, things will fall apart. And in doing so, it starves your faith. Not religious faith necessarily, but the deep, cellular trust that something greater is at work, that life can hold you even when you don't have all the answers. There's a paradox here. The more you try to know, the less you truly understand. The more you analyze, the more you separate yourself from the felt experience of knowing. Spiritual wisdom often arrives not in thoughts, but in revelations, in deep, wordless clarity. You don't think your way to it, you open to it, but overthinking closes the door. It tells you that certainty is safer than wonder, that answers are more valuable than insight, that control is more powerful than faith. This is why so many spiritually inclined people eventually burn out on personal development. They start by seeking understanding, but then the mind hijacks the journey. It becomes a quest for endless information, tools, techniques, and theories. More books, more podcasts, more processing. And while all of those things are valuable, they can also become distractions. Because real transformation doesn't always come from more thinking. Sometimes it comes from unthinking, from softening, surrendering, and allowing life to reveal itself to you, rather than forcing yourself to decode it. When you overthink, you delay action. You hesitate when you should leap. You micromanage when you should listen. You search the map when the next step is already in your chest. And perhaps the most tragic cost of overthinking is this: it dulls your aliveness. It keeps you in perpetual preparation mode, always analyzing, never embodying, always watching life from the sidelines instead of dancing with it. You become a spectator in your own journey. But you weren't born to spectate. You were born to feel, to trust your gut, to follow the energy, to walk into the unknown, not with a strategy, but with a heartbeat that says, I may not know how, but I'm going. Overthinking steals the magic. It makes everything heavy. And worst of all, it convinces you that if you could just think a little harder, you'd finally find peace. But peace isn't found in thinking. It's found in being. And the sooner we recognize that, the sooner we return, not just to ourselves, but to the divine rhythm that's been waiting for us all along. So if overthinking is costing you connection, clarity, and aliveness, how do you begin to take that power back? Reclaiming peace isn't about silencing the mind forever. It's about shifting where you live inside yourself. You can still think, you can still plan, but you don't have to reside in that mental space. You don't have to believe every thought that comes up or obey its frantic urgency, because peace isn't the absence of thought, it's the return to presence. And presence only happens in the body. The body is the soul's home. It's the only place your intuition can land, the only place life can speak to you directly. That's why the first step to reclaiming peace is coming back into the body, not conceptually, but viscerally, tangibly. This means grounding, moving your attention from your head into your feet, feeling the weight of your spine, the rise of your belly as you breathe, the subtle rhythm of your heartbeat. Every time you anchor into sensation, you interrupt the overthinking loop. You pull energy down from your thoughts and return it to the earth, where it can root, where it can stabilize. Stillness is not something you chase. It's something you allow by slowing down enough to feel. And when you feel, you remember, you're not just a brain on legs. You're a living, breathing ecosystem of intelligence. Not just mental intelligence, but emotional, energetic, spiritual. You start to notice things. How your chest tightens when you say yes, but mean no. How your stomach clenches around certain people. How your body actually knows before your mind catches up. This is the sacred shift, from thinking your way through life to feeling your way through it. And yes, that shift can be terrifying, especially if you've learned to equate thinking with control. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control life, the more rigid and uncertain it becomes. Control isn't clarity, it's tension dressed up as logic. Clarity comes from connection, from trust, which brings us to surrender. Now, surrender doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean giving up or floating aimlessly through life. Surrender means relaxing the grip. It means saying, I don't have to figure it all out right now. I don't need to know the full story to take the next step. That's not weakness. That's a deep spiritual strength. to soften into the moment, to admit you're not the architect of everything, to open to divine timing, because divine timing is real. Things unfold when you're ready, not when you're desperate. And many times, answers arrive after you stop obsessing over them. The relationship clicks into place after you stop chasing it. The idea surfaces in the shower after you step away from the whiteboard. The opportunity appears once you stop micromanaging the path. There's a sacred intelligence moving through your life, and it's not always linear. It's not always rational, but it is trustworthy. And it speaks most clearly when you're willing to not know for a while. That's the medicine overthinking needs. Not more thinking, but more trust. And trust lives in the heart. The heart is your true compass. Not the sentimental heart, not the broken one romanticized in songs, but the intelligent heart, the one that can hold paradox, make intuitive leaps, and sense direction without needing a spreadsheet. Science now confirms what mystics have always known. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. It's a command center in its own right. When you drop into your heart, you make room for coherence, for clarity that isn't manufactured but embodied. To reclaim your peace, start with this. One slow breath, one moment of stillness where you place your hand on your chest and say, I don't need to know right now. I just need to be here. From there, the layers start to unravel. The urgency dissolves. The fear shrinks. The child inside feels safer. And little by little, you remember that life was never asking you to have it all figured out. It was just asking you to show up. Peace doesn't arrive when everything is solved. Peace arrives when you remember. You are allowed to not know. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to trust what's unfolding, even when it's blurry, because you are not lost. You are simply learning to listen to a deeper voice, and it's been waiting patiently for you to come home. Your mind is brilliant, but it's not your master. It was never meant to carry the weight of the entire world. Let go of the illusion that control brings clarity. Sometimes, peace comes not from solving, but from surrendering. So here's a soulful challenge for your heart. What's one thing you'll stop trying to figure out today? Just one. Hand it over. Breathe. Trust. You don't need all the answers to move forward. You only need the courage to let go.